All right. So we're gonna go over Gubat Banwa. Beautiful art. This is written by Makapatag or Joaquin Kyle Saavedra. Um, he's produced a number of awesome systems. He is a game designer from the Philippines, from Manila, and very much takes that inspiration. As soon as you open the book, you're seeing a lot of poems, you're seeing a lot of lore, welcoming you to the world of the Sword Isles. I think the best place to start here would probably be with the overall story and then the conflict of it all. Gubat Banwa is a story about a world that is kind of approaching its final darkness, a big conflict, as these five nations or mandalas are in conflict because of the impacts of colonialism. So the players are Kadungganan. They are warriors who are going to ideally change the world of the place. The GM, if there is one, is called the Umalagad, which would be me when I run this game, which is very exciting. It looks like an intimidating system, but it's not that bad. So let's start with the lore. You have five nations that are in conflict with one another. They have different relationships to colonialism, specifically with this empire of magic users, very much inspired by colonial Spain, called the Pale Kings, and the influence they had on them. But even after they were kind of driven off, there's still this looming threat of them, and the five nations are still kind of at war. So let's go through them. The five major mandalas, or the five nations. By the way, all of these, we'll get there soon, but they all have their own like classes or subclasses, martial arts, etc. when you design your characters. It's an intimidating book, but it's actually not that complicated, so I'm going to go through that. First, you have the Rajanate of Gatusan. This is inspired by the Hindu-Buddhist maritime kingdoms across Southeast Asia. So when you go to the classes and subclasses for Gatusan, it's going to be a lot of pirate-flavored subclasses, a lot of raiders, sentinels, etc. We'll get to the classes later. The Confederation of Apumbukid. I'm going to struggle with pronunciation a bit. But they are inspired, I believe, by, yes, the Balinese, the Sundanese, etc. Various living traditions of maritime Southeast Asia who still practice much of their indigenous religions. So I'm going to have to pop down to that section later to go to what they're specific for. But I believe everything is like, there's a lot of like battle dancing ritualistic flavor to them. The Sultanate of Akai is inspired by various Islam-influenced nations of Southeast Asia, which is very cool. A lot of very interesting warrior and spellcasting classes. The Lakanate of Virbanwa is the one that is closest inspired by colonial Philippines. Basically, they were the ones that suffered the most directly under the Pale Kings, but they have learned from the imperialism rather than necessarily grown from it. So they tend to have classes that work very well working together. It's very militaristic. Some light Christianity influence with them. Their god is treated as the father that they worship. Really cool information about... what was I going to say? Really cool information about the people ruling each of these places as well. But we're mostly just going to touch on this because I want to get down to the classes. The Kingdom of Bae, I might be pronouncing that wrong because this is supposed to be East Asian influenced, but it's inspired by the Hindu-Buddhist kingdoms of Southeast Asia. So really cool classes there as well. Oh, so this is the part where the music swells and gets a little bit louder. Let me see if I can lower that a little bit. There we go. Awesome. So, how to actually play the game. Let me go over that real quick. Here, I have some bookmarks that I can go through. So, rather than using D20s like you'd expect of games like D&D or Pathfinder, this game is pretty Pathfinder inspired, a little bit like Fate Core inspired as well. You are using D8s and D10s. And because everything is very flavorful, rather than being dice, They are teeth, specifically crocodile teeth, which, are used in a lot of the cultures that this was inspired by for similar type of dice rolling games, etc. Um, and there's like very little math in it too, which is very refreshing. So basically, all you're doing is when you try to do something, your stat for it will have a pretty simple single digit number usually, and you roll that number of d10s. If you're trying to do something bold, which would probably be like a fire stat, you would be rolling 4d10, for example. Then the GM would look at how difficult the task you were doing is, or you, if you're playing solo, and then you would roll difficulty die against it. So you roll a set of d10s to try and do a thing, and then the GM, or you playing as the game itself, will roll a set of d8s against it. Every 6 or higher on your d10s is a hit, every 10 is 2 hits, every 6 on the d8 and higher is a miss. Misses and hits cancel each other out, so you want to be rolling more hits than misses, which the game is in favor of because you're rolling d10s versus d8s. And let's see, where is it? And then you look at the final results. Like, if you get 1 to 2 hits, it's a partial success. If you get 5+, it's a legendary success. If you get no hits or negative hits, it is a failure. So you use all of this, taking it into account. So it's not a lot of math. You're not rolling and like adding a ton of stats. Your stats are like, okay, cool, yeah, roll 3d10 for this. And if you're pretty confident about it, we only have to roll 2d8 against you, and we'll see how you do. There isn't really much math other than adding and subtracting how many hits versus how many misses, which is really, really cool. There's a system called moons, which is kind of like the clocks of Blades in the Dark, which determine the pace at which things are happening, which seem very useful for solo play. I don't know if I'm ready to use it as GM, but it seems very useful for solo play because it can determine when things happen to the player characters, or the kadungganan. This section about debt is very cool. I was just talking to my dad, who's from the Philippines originally, about debt in the Philippines, and debt is very significant culturally. So there is a mechanic about owing people and other people owing you things, and you can cash in on the debt as well. All these juicy roleplay mechanics are there, as well as combat mechanics. Yeah, there is a debt system. It's very simple. Basically, you just ask people to do something if they owe you a debt, and if they choose not to, you give them another debt. And if they give any more debt, they have to do the thing. And if you're attacking a target that owes you, you get 1 hit. So you kind of get an auto success on your die. So there's this really potentially interesting thing where you can get your enemies indebted to you and it affects combat, which I think is really, really cool. Let's see, stats down at page 57, I believe. Cha-cha-cha. Yes, okay, so combat. Here is how combat works. You are rolling d10s versus d8s even in combat. The initiators are rolling d10s with their offensive stat, and the people being attacked roll d8s with their defensive stats to try and avoid taking damage. So your equivalent of strength is BRV, or bravery. That's your physical and weapon attacks, and you roll that against their posture, which is kind of like dex or speed. It allows you to parry, deflect, dodge, etc. So if you have 5 brave and your opponent has 5 posture, you're going to be rolling 5d10, they're going to be rolling 5d8, and whoever comes out on top, whoever has the most hits and misses, or whoever has the most hits, will get that damage, etc. And if it misses, you miss. I think there's still a little bit of damage done. But yeah. And then faith is the magic stat, and resistance is to resist it. Speed is also single digit. It's not 30 feet like D&D. Speed is the number of squares you can move when you take a movement action or a stride, because this is ideally a grid-based combat game, kind of like Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics, which is one of the other reasons I'm so excited about it. Fighting styles too. There are, broadly speaking, 5 styles, which you can kind of think as classes. There's Raiders, it says top right, deal damage and move quickly. Sharpshooters deal damage from afar. Sentinels take damage and control the battlefield. Witches inflict debuffs and forced movement, and mediums support their allies and heal. So what I also find kind of cool about this system is that I'm going to compare a lot of things to D&D 5th edition. because I think that's a common point of reference for a lot of people. But raiders, which are kind of like the offensive class, in D&D, your barbarians and your fighters are also usually your tanks as well. That's not the case here, because there is a specific sentinel class. They're going to be dealing much less damage than the raiders. So you can have a really fun team comp, where you have a sentinel who's really focused on controlling the battlefield, and then a raider who's mostly like the DPS, rushing in and doing damage. So it's kind of like a MOBA a little bit, with your tank units and your attacking units, rather than just having in D&D where you have just like big walls of health and damage. Also a lot like Xenoblade 3, which I find exciting. Rhythm is combat order. NPCs go first, and then the Kadunganan, I believe you choose what order you go in. And what I find so cool about it is that there is always a turn where somebody of one side is going to go. So if you have your party of 3 versus 3 NPCs, it'll be like NPC 1, party 1, NPC 2, party 2, etc., etc., etc. But if you wipe out the other party members or the other NPCs, they're still going to be going every turn. Then the new order will be party member 1, NPC 1, party member 2, NPC 1, party member 3, NPC 1. It's like when you are cornered to be the last one, you are always getting a turn. It's a really good way to solve the action economy problem that plagues D&D, and where you have to add legendary actions to all your big bosses because they're not getting turns. If you only have one enemy, they're going after every one of your player character's turn, which is really cool. And of course, this is all flavored wonderfully. Fulmination is kind of like a term for combat, basically. Beats are your actions. You have 3 actions or beats when you do combat, so it's kind of like Pathfinder, where you can movement, attack, and then do maybe a status effect or something like that. You could also just attack, but you do roll less dice for most classes if you attack. So sometimes it's best to like do one of your big status effect skills that might cost 2 beats or 2 actions to do, and then do an attack. So it's very versatile in that way. Let's see. There's a lot of information, like all of the effects and terms are covered. It's all in here. It's a little bit confusing, but this book is very much worth getting it. It's only $20, because look at this art. Like, can you not see this, like, playing out like Final Fantasy Tactics? This is so cool. Like, this is just the illustrations describing some different types of battle moments, right? This gets, like, the Fire Emblem player in my brain going, which is really cool. Like, your attacks can go in lines, they can go in paths, where you kind of choose how they curve around. It's so hype. It's so cool. We're going to skip over the advanced violence rules, because I haven't run the system yet, and I'm very new to it. Let me see. What do I want to go over next? That's a little overview of the lore. I think we are pretty close to reviewing the broad classes. I mentioned them before. But these are the types of enemies that you can use, which is quite fun, or a few of the basic types of enemies you can use. So like you have your generic raider right here, and the way solo play works is right here. You roll a d8 to see what they do to you. Like if you're fighting against an assassin type raider on the right here, and you roll a d8, why don't we, you know what, let's get the dice out. Let's see what that's like. Give me that d8. Give me that diamond-shaped die. I would like to demonstrate a roll. I'm getting attacked by an assassin, and they just rolled a 6. So according to this, they're going to Shadow Strike twice, which is teleport, inflict violence, and then Shadow Step. So they are going to teleport in, attack me, and then teleport out. They are literally going to teleport behind me, hit me, and then vanish away. So that's how the solo play works. You know, you roll to see what you're up against, and then you roll to see what they do. That's how the game works. That's how you can play it solo, which is really, really hype. And there's a bunch of different types of these raiders as well. Assassins, Lancers, Raiders. These are not your subclasses. Your subclasses are a little bit more in depth. But here's your generic sharpshooter. They can be snipers, cannoneers, blowgunners, etc. Your generic defender or sentinel riding on an alligator, which is really sick. I love it. Reminds you of Pokemon Conquest. Interesting. I was just watching a video on that. I need to check it out. Witches are like your offensive mages. Also, what's kind of cool about it is the stats next to the witch, that 9/11/13. That is a way to show that the enemies are leveling up with you as you progress throughout your story. When you're in arc 1 of the story, for example, probably the very beginning, the witches are going to have 9 HP. The middle third of the story, they're going to have 11. Towards the end, they're going to have 13, etc. And then they're brave. They're going to start with 4, and then it's 5, and then it's 6 at different points in the story. So they would roll like 4 dice to attack you with brave, for example. Though they're probably going to attack you with faith because they're witches. All right, is it time to go over player characters? One thing that's confusing about the book, by the way, but makes a lot of sense in retrospect, is it has a lot of very strong enemies right here, and it introduces the enemies, including like the end game level enemies, before the player characters. The player characters, I believe, don't start getting introduced until like page 170, but there's a lot of really cool lore to dip into. Hello, Erica. Just going over the system here. There's also quite a bit about these ominous figures called the Pale Kings, which are the ones inspired by colonial Spain. As you can see, there's like a very strong Catholic element to this figure right here. These are kind of like your super bosses, your big imperialism made manifest figures, which is really cool. Yeah, it is absolutely wonderful. Not colonialism, but the stat blocks right here are wild. Biblically accurate angel as an enemy. I love it. All right, I think it's about time to go over player classes and character creation. I'm gonna scroll a bit. Sorry if the scrolling is a little bit frenetic. But here is how to actually create your character. The way you are going to create your character in Gubat Banwa. Luckily, it's all laid out on page 140, though it can be a little bit confusing, so I'm going to run through it real quick. You're going to choose a folk, which is kind of like your race in games like D&D. Purely cosmetic, which is cool. Good way to avoid all of the awkward things about it. But there are dog people, there are deer people, and they all have lore. Or you could just be a human or a bamboo person. There's a specific word for it. Bamboo folk. You can choose a role for your culture or subculture, which is cool. So if you don't want to delve too deep into the lore where you have to read a bunch before you make a decision, you can roll for it and then read up on that culture or subculture. You can define your conviction, which is like your character motivation, your conjunctures, debts, and complications. So you can choose one person you owe a debt to, which is fun because we were just talking about the debt system. See how that affects things. The divine alignments is the first bit where I think we really need to start paying attention to how this differentiates from things like D&D and Pathfinder, because those are your soft stats, basically. Those are what you roll for skill checks, and they are based on the 4 elements plus metal. We're going to go over that in a sec, but it's really exciting. All of your stats start at 3, but you can distribute 2 points among them. And here you go. Here are the elements and the way they affect things, or the alignments, rather. There's fire, water, metal, air, and earth. And they all respond to different parts of your character. So when you're creating your Kadunganan, you're going to look at where the elements would be inside of them, basically. Like if you have a very aggressive character, fire might be your highest alignment stat, which in this case would be a... a 4. So you'd be rolling 4d10 whenever you are doing anything that requires force, strength, and ferocity. Like, let's say you're trying to push a cart or something like that. Water, meanwhile, is your spirituality, weirdness, etc. I guess you can kind of think of it as a little bit like wisdom. Metal is your preciseness, exactness, or cleverness. Air is your dexterity, agility, or quickness, and earth is your kindness, persuasion, or charisma. So these all correspond to your ability checks. You're going to give yourself a sword, a crown, and a mask as well, which is basically, think of it as your strengths and your weaknesses. So not only does every character have these elements which serve as skill checks, there's a reason that they are flavored like the elements. You're going to choose one sword element, which is your core identity, and you can make your attack into that element, like this fire character we're dreaming up. If we see an enemy with resistance to, let's say, metal, if you're attacking with a metal weapon, you can choose to attack with fire instead, just because that is your sword alignment. Your crown alignment, meanwhile, your inner self, your emotions, that's what you're weak to. Everyone is going to be weak to an element. You're making a Pokemon. It's funny you mentioned Pokemon Conquest, because you're going to have an element that you can optionally attack with, and you're going to have an element that you're weak to. And then finally, your mask alignment is the alignment that you basically have resistance against. You have conditioning in the terms of the game against it, meaning you roll 1 extra defense die, which is really cool and awesome. Here are the folk of the Sword Isles. The Kawayanon, or the bamboo folk, are the humans. But we also have the Iro-Iro, which are the dog folk, which is incredible. The Kamikam are the cat folk. The Laksaman are the monkey folk. What is this one? Pilandokan, I believe, are the deer folk, or the mouse deer folk. Pak-an are the bird folk. And they all have lore. They all have big blocks of text describing them, so you can read a lot about everything. Here's a lot of like culture information where you can roll to see, let's say you decide you're from Gatusan, which is kind of the maritime kingdom. You can roll a d8 to choose like what type of lineage you are. Let's just roll a d8 again. So this character that we would hypothetically be making is adopted into a family of courtesans and singers instead of warriors. You've never known your real family. Boom. We're a magical orphan. Let's see. And yeah, you can roll for social standing as well. You can all roll for this. If this is a lot of lore, don't worry. You can roll for your background and everything. Alright. So, more lore about all of the nations. What I want to do now is go over the actual classes, the player characters. Thank you for being patient, because I'm very excited to go over the player character classes. Sorry, scrolling a lot. Sorry, it's a little bit frenetic. I'm just pressing the spacebar a bunch. Look away if you are bothered by rapidly advancing colors. Where is it? Here we are. All right. Okay, so all of the classes and subclasses have associations with the different nations. So that's kind of the way you can roll for it. You know, you decide you're from Gatusan, you decide you're from the Maritime Kingdom. You can literally roll to see which of these classes you're going to be. And what their personality is, what their stats are, etc. So you don't have to go super deep into the writing a big paragraph about your character. We are going to use the Buaya Lancer, or the Crocodile Lancer, literally, a Sentinel class character, to kind of describe what it's like to play the game. So you've decided your alignment, you've decided what elements are strongest within your character, you've decided your stats, and you've added your 2 numbers to different stats to increase them. And then boom, you have 20 HP, just flat 20 HP as a Crocodile Rider. You get all of these passive abilities, like when you pull any fighter to a square adjacent of you, you can inflict 1 hit, once per fulmination, or once per combat. And there is all of this lore on the left side talking about how this martial art, how this fighting style, this crocodile-based combat came to be. And yes, Fire Emblem needs Crocodile Riders. Listen, tangent. Fire Emblem Fates could have been so cool if they had a lot more of those little cultural bits sprinkled around. Instead, they chickened out. Anyway, so you get the violences of the class, which are basically the actions, the attacks that you could do just by default. You pick a subclass, boom, you get 3 different basic attacks. Your basic attacks are Spearing Dragon, Barreling Dragon, and Fishing Rod, which, by the way, all cost 1 action, or 1 beat. You can spend your turn literally going Spearing Dragon, Barreling Dragon, Fishing Rod. You would have to roll, subtract some attack die for it, but you can literally do that. Combat is never boring. You're not just smacking things. You have all of these really cool abilities. And it's still straightforward because you're still rolling the same dice for them, which is great. You also select 2 martial arts styles upon selecting your character. So let's say the Buaya Lancer. We're just going down in order, let's say. So let's say we take Dragon Seizes the Sky. So you are all about wrestling and using crocodile jaws to grab things. Boom, that's one martial art. Draconic Majesty stance allows you to provoke enemies and become a little bit more stable to attack you. Boom, those are your two martial arts. So, boom, you've created your character, you've decided their alignment, you've distributed their stats, you've both statistically in terms of bravery, faith, etc., and also in terms of the elements, the alignments, sword, crown, etc. inside of them. You get these violences by default, you choose your two martial arts, and you are ready to go, assuming you have all the backstory stuff done. You are ready to get moving. And over the course of the game, you can eventually learn 10 different martial art styles. So you can go all the way down the Buaya Lancer technique. So boom, you have Dragon Seizes the Sky, you have Draconic Majesty stance. Let's keep going. Let's take Dragon Lair Creation Pamagi. Let's take Makara Meditation, Death Roll style. The Enlightenment, which is the Makara Seeming, which is kind of like your ultimate ability, which is what you get as kind of mastery of this one class. And wait a second, you can learn 10 different martial arts, 10 different martial art styles, but this is only like 6. Well, you can jump around. You can take martial art styles from different fighting styles. You can, let's say go down to the Kowal. That's another Sentinel. So you can, you finished up your Crocodile. Now you can just start taking abilities from this one, like the Kitasamba Shield, which allows you to take a Guardian stance. And you can mix and match that with your Crocodile Lancer abilities. So there is a level of customization, but it's actually not that complicated. You're basically just deciding your stats, which is how many dice you roll. You are picking your starting class for your Kadunganan, and then you are picking 2 martial art styles, and then as you level up throughout the game, you increase your stats, you pick a few more martial art styles, and you're done. Like that's it. And obviously there's a lot of complexity, a lot of crunch within these styles. Like let's take a look at the Enlightenment level skill for the what's it called? The Crocodile Lancer, the Buaya Lancer. So automatically you raise your base HP by 2, and then you can spend 1 beat at strike 3+, so turn 3+, to turn your mount into a Makara, a legendary dragon crocodile. Gain the following benefits for the rest of the violence, or the combat. +1 brave, +1 faith, +2 speed, +2 posture, stability, and regen, which are kind of positive status effects. Finally, you ignore all terrain and elevation and become size 2. So that's your ultimate crocodile ability. You can literally grow your crocodile to be huge, which is incredible. I'm so excited not only to run this system, but also just fucking play it by myself. I'm so hyped. So that's basically it. I would love to maybe have someone on stream to talk about the system with, so that I can go through it with them. Maybe it'll be you, Timmy. We'll see. So that I can chat and be a little bit less of a blob of excited words about this system. But I'd love to just kind of go through the rest of the classes, just a glance at them, a little tease, before I go in and raid a friend's charity stream. So that's the basics. That's the how-to. That's the lore. That is the character creation, very quick, abridged character creation, and the excitement of creating the character. So I'm going to continue going through the Gatusan classes to kind of describe what else is available for you in the game. Gonna take a water break, talk amongst yourselves. Amazing. All right, so next up in the Gatusan classes, we have the Kawal. I'm probably going to go through these in depth once I have actually tried out the system a little bit more. Seems to be another Sentinel class. They use spears, big shields, all about shielding stuff, shield charging, etc. It seems like. It seems like this is a class that's very good at defending allies. Like this ability, you can swap places with an ally who's under attack. What's your Enlightenment? You gain block 1 at the start of your fulmination, at strike 3+, for 1 beat, choose 1 fighter in range 3 to declare a Bulu with. You and the target of your Bulu cannot be targeted or damaged by any attacks. What? You and the target of the Bulu can only treat each other as valid targets. However, you gain +1 to all martial abilities while in the Bulu. If you or the target falls to 0 HP, the Bulu ends. Okay. Gotcha. So you're kind of like, you're gaining a block and then you're protecting each other, which is really cool. The I'm gonna struggle with some of the pronunciations of these words. I'm doing my best. I'm a New Yorker. I have the Filipino blood, but I'm a New Yorker. The Mangangayao. Mangangayao seems to be a little pirate themed, which is quite fun. Also, again, appreciation for the art. Looks really rad. This is our first raider. The first two were sentinels. This seems to be like someone who moves in and out to attack, I believe. So you are spending 1 beat to raid, you are striding, and then you're attacking, and you're gaining a bonus. Okay, so you basically, if you move a certain distance, you get a bonus to attack. That's the type of raider class that this is. Let's see. We're just going to go through all these relatively quickly, because there's like 6 per nation. The Sword Poet looks really cool. Is this also a sentinel? Yes, it is. A lot of sentinels in Gatusan, which is interesting. So the Sword Poet, your kind of sword bard, seems to be do attacks, and then you inflict statuses like provoke, which is very cool. Let's see. Yeah, so you can inflict speed down when attacking enemies to lower their movement. You can sing a dragon song. Very cool. So they suffer 1 true hit. Okay, cool. So debuffs. They seem like a sentinel with debuffs. The Warrior Balian, I believe, is our first medium, which are our support casters. Let's see what they do. Sorry, I'm going through things kind of quickly. But this one I remember looked pretty complicated. They have a lot of animal-themed spells, it looks like serpent, owl, deer, allow you to slide, teleport, give posture up, heal 1, inflict res up, etc. So they seem to be like an animal-themed caster, which is very cool. Support caster, a lot of dance themes to it, war dance, etc. Let's see. Okay, we are now on to Apumbukid, which I believe is the Balinese-inspired classes. First up, we have the Death Dancer. Is that a raider? Yes, it is. This is our raider. Obviously, this guy's going to be DVS. Look at him. So 100 hands. Yeah. This is seems like a multi-attack type. A lot of pushing, it looks like, with the actions, which is very cool. I'm going to go through these kind of quickly. The Head Taker. Very gristly art right here, but another raider. A lot of raiders in these Balinese-inspired classes. Bro, is a whole JoJo stand. Timmy, just wait, because we have not gotten to the stand classes yet. There's 2 of them, and they're very exciting. This Head Taker class has an ability called Cleave and Eviscerate, and the first thing it says is go for the fucking throat. So this seems to be kind of like a critical hit class. If the target is staggered, like the status condition, which can be generated by other attacks, you generate 2 hits on 9+ instead of 1. So they crit easier, basically. This is kind of like your crit class, it looks like. This is a long word. But here's our first witch. Makinadmanon, I believe. This is a witch type. A lot of elements, it looks like. Oh, this is just straight up lots of blasting. Blasting lightning, blasting water. Very cool, I like it. The Tikpana is an archer. I believe they had an ability where they can have their arrows like hover in the air. Yeah, future arrow. They can choose when to make them fall down, which is very cool. Yes, there are stand classes. Hang in for like 10 minutes and we will get there. The War Speaker is a witch class that seems to be more about like messing with people's stats rather than just blasting them. So again, there's variety even within these classes. So like for your offensive caster, like you have Mock, ranged air bravery attack versus a fighter in range 5 within 5 squares of you, inflict provoke. Then you choose what ally they're provoked to. Very cool. You can manipulate. Oh, you can slide a fighter around. So these people are just messing with the battlefield, not necessarily dealing damage. Not all witches deal damage. There's like a lot of stats to it all. Okay, are we on to... Okay, we're on to Akai, which is the Sultanate. which is very cool. Okay, first of all, I am most excited to go over this class that's on screen right now, the Swordfish Cavalier. We're gonna get there. The Beast Hunter is your Beastmaster Ranger. You have animals, and they act on your beats with you, or on your fulmination with you. So you have these animals to support you while you are setting traps. You begin with 3 pit traps, it says. So you can inflict status effects that way while dealing damage with you and your animal. The Martyr looked like a really interesting raider class because they thrive when they are getting attacked, which I thought was really interesting. Let's see. Where was a good example of it? So they hit stances, and I think they like to be attacked because they have a lot of AoE around them, it looks like. Interesting. While you are staggered, all your melee attacks generate 2 hits on 9+ instead of 1. So while you're suffering the status effect, you crit easier. So the Martyr is a raider class that seems to thrive when under pressure, which I think is so fascinating. Definitely one that I want to give a try. I don't know if I'm ready for it yet. Okay, this is the... Can't quite read that word in the font very well. Is that Sarunanok Knight? Oh, I'm sorry. Sarimanok Knight. You're riding a giant rooster. Or some type of rainbow bird. I assume you get a lot of movement. You get a lightning javelin, which is cool. Very nice. The Strife Singer, another medium class. Strife Singer, I believe, is a supportive bard type class. Yeah, you have healing notes, but you do have some offensive abilities. Looks like air-themed. So I think that's another bit about creating your character. Like, if you're playing a Strife Singer, which is a class that attacks with wind, it's probably in your best interest to give yourself an alignment, a sword alignment, of an element like fire or something like that. So if you're dealing with an enemy that resists wind, boom, you can make all your attacks fire element, which is really cool. So maybe that's where some of the crunch comes in. Here's my guy, Swordfish Cavalier. I love it. I love the Swordfish Cavalier, just off the flavor alone. This is a sharpshooter, one of our first sharpshooters. Literally riding on a giant swordfish. You can rush around with melee attacks, but you also have ranged attacks, which is lovely. You can do Seafoam Slide, which is super duper cool. Alright, so we only have a few nations left, and then we are going to wrap it up. Virbanwa is next, and yes, I agree, mounted sharpshooters. Hell yes, love me some bow knights. Virbanwa is the nation that has survived colonization and unfortunately taken some cues from it. So they like to work together. They like to be kind of like an organized militaristic force. You have the Barrelwitch, barrel just meaning a word for like a type of pistol. Guns in Gubat Banwa tend to be very slow, but the Barrelwitch accentuates it with magic, based off of what I got from glancing at their flavor text. Which is very cool. A lot of ranged blasting. The Blade Weaver, another melee medium. So a little bit of sword and sorcery, which is usually my favorite type of class, which is very exciting. The Murderglaive is our edgy class, which is really exciting. They're sentinels, but I believe they deal a ton of damage, just based off of how I glanced. Yeah, like they do Lance of Darkness as one of their basic attacks, which is an area Earth Faith attack at all fighters in Blast 2. So that's a 2x2 square. Just boom. That's one of their basic attacks. So they do a lot of damage. Or they have a lot of AoEs to help do a lot of damage. So true. Kill every last one of them. Yeah, this is the Dimitri class. Want to make a Dimitri Fire Emblem? Make him a Murderglaive. Legit, probably. The Senapati, based on the blowing of the horn to signal battle. But they also have a sword. I didn't look too deeply at this one. But they seem to be buffing allies as well as a medium. Spend 1 beat to make 1 ally in range rush 2. Oh, so you blow the horn to make them rush forward, which is very cool. Again, I'm going to go over these more in depth once I actually get to mess around in the system a bit. Sword Saint, interestingly, is not a medium or a raider, but a sharpshooter, which is interesting. So another magic sword class, but this one is all about ranged attacking. So they are sending slashes across the area, fire element. So again, maybe you want to make your crown element like water or earth or something like that if you're going Sword Saint. We are on to Bae, and Timmy, get ready, because we got one stand class upcoming. The Flower Balian is a flower necromancer, which is very cool. I guess the closest D&D equivalent would be like the Circle of Spores Druid, but it is specifically flower flavored. They're a witch class, so they're doing weapons made out of petals, thorns, vines, etc. The Heaven Spear, I haven't looked at too deeply, but this is a raider class. Let's see, do they have a lot of range or something? Oh, so they are fast. They can rush 3 as an action. Strike so quick like lightning. Okay, so you attack and you push and then you rush. Wow! Okay, so this is actually very mobile type of fighting style, which is interesting. And again, you can mix and match these too, so there's a lot of depth here. Mender, I assume, does a lot of healing. Strike with a Mystic Palm, inflict speed down. Slide. Let's see. Yep, heal 2, an ally in range 5. And when your HP is 20, heal 2 off of 1 action. Not insignificant. For sure. I want to try this Star Shooter class. You got Waka from Final Fantasy X right here. You just you just kick sports balls and things, which is great. This is your sharpshooter. Yeah, I think the whole theming is that you're kicking balls at people, which I love. The shooting star ability, pick up any projectile, a bead, a mote of dust, a leaf, ember for a flame, and kick it at a target. Ranged air bravery attack versus a fighter in range 5, and then inflict 1 hit on another fighter in range 2 of target. Oh, so it bounces from one enemy into the other. Alright, this is my favorite sharpshooter now. Sports ball class. Incredible. Warsmith. Not quite a JoJo stand, but we do have your one that controls a big mech. This is your Battlesmith, which I love. Interestingly, a witch. Oh, okay. So, let's see. Striking forcefully with a hammer of their giant enemy. You can spend 1 beat to place a statue down. Size of 1 object. Any ranged attack has its line of effect. Go within burst 1 of the... Okay, so that's a defensive statue. Okay, so you are literally building statues to attack and defend with, which is cool. Let's see. Oh, and that's actually it, because we're on to the Anting, which is the items that you can equip your Kadunganan with, which I don't believe are actually necessary. So yeah, I think that's about it then. I thought there was one more stand class, but hey, the Warsmith still looks very cool. All right. So that was a little taste of Gubat Banwa. I hope you enjoyed. This is my first time doing something like this, so if you enjoyed it, let me know. Really excited to be running this system soon. More details to come on that. Here we go. We got to end on the Swordfish Cavalier. My guy, my boy, my lad. There he is. And thank you all so much for stopping by.